Irish Media Network. We entertain.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to Irish Media Network Sports Update. I'm your host, Joe Caulfield, and on tonight's episode, we're going to be bringing you updates, insight, and all the talking points from everything that's happening in the world of GAA in this past week. So, as many of you will know, last Friday, the GAA published their roadmap to return to play for club and intercounty training and competitive play for other players. No more than anything else, not just the roadmap, it's going to have lots of ramifications for the GAA season and the GAA community in general. So we've loads and loads and loads to talk about in this episode. And joining me this week to do so is three-time GAA McNamee Award winner of the 2007 Boyle Sports Irish Sports Book of the Year, Sunday Times sports journalist, Michael Foley's on the line. Michael, thank you so much for joining me.
No problem. I'm just laughing at the picture there. That young fella, so full of hope and spirit and optimism. Look at him.
So
look at
innocent and naive, eh?
And look at this husk of a man that's left about, I don't know how many years ago. That's an old picture. That's a very old picture. But there we go.
I thought that was January, and this is just the effect of lockdown, mate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the grizzly Adam. Yeah, I come down from Cold Mountain now in the next week or two, and I can get a shave and a bath, and everything will be fine again.
Yeah, you'll be grand. How's lockdown going? How's it treating you?
It's okay. It's different. It's everybody has their own challenges when it comes to this kind of thing. Excuse me. I mean, what I would find, say, from a professional side of things, I would work from home. I've worked from home, I think, 15 years now, maybe 1 or 2 years in the middle of that back in an office, but largely from home. So
right.
The work from home thing wasn't a major issue. It's the travel, I suppose, with the nature of the job.
Yeah.
You'll be on the road a lot. So obviously having 3 months of not being in Dublin, and I'm based in Mid Cork, West Cork. So not being on the road has been a big difference. All right. And but it's like everybody, we just have to adapt and modify and accept it for what it is and make the best of it,
Yeah, exactly. It does bring me on to something that I wanted to kind of talk to you about, because when I was kind of putting together the doing a bit of prep, I was just thinking, like, the landscape of sport in general is going to change quite dramatically in the coming weeks and months. Hopefully not irreversibly, but generally for the kind of the short-term future is going to change. As a sports journalist, how is that going to affect your ability to do your job?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. Like, I mean, it's one of those things, like a lot of the last few months, we won't know until it happens. I suppose is the glib answer. But I think the fact, obviously, from a Gaelic Games perspective, all things going well and the infection rate staying low and the GAA's plan coming to fruition. Obviously, you'll have club games from the end of July, and then an intercounty from October, and it'll obviously be very intense at a time of year when it's usually sort of evening out a little bit. You have club competitions ordinarily at the end of the year, but generally speaking, obviously now is high season, so it's going to be a bit different. From the point of view of, let's say, access and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's been the nature of the beast anyway. I mean, I started in this job in 1998, 97, 98. So back then it was a very different landscape, but maybe not as different as people sometimes remember it, if you know what I mean. I mean, you would have had media restrictions back then as well, but at the same time, you would have done your preparation for, we say in the case of a Sunday newspaper, you would have done your interviews for the following Sunday in that week, and
of course,
and that kind of thing. Whereas now that would. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that would not happen. Whereas now you'll be operating weeks ahead. How that operates now when we come back into a truncated season, it's very hard to know. I'd imagine it will be easier for managers and counties to control it and limit access even more if they want to, because the games could potentially be coming on top of each other very fast. So it could actually become more difficult. At the same time, you'll have a lot more matches on a Saturday and a lot more games on a single Saturday and a single Sunday. So it's hard to know. It's hard to know. I mean, as it is, we'll say the distance between a journalist and a player is a lot wider than it would have been even 10 years ago. I would say it's a lot wider.
I'd imagine so. It actually brings me to a slight tangent. I don't know if you read the interview with Michael Hertig in The Independent over the weekend, and he was talking about how he, during the 70s, was a period where he actually coached the Kerry players based in Dublin as a sports journalist for RTE, and it's just gas that was how intimate that relationship was and how detached we are now.
Well, I mean, that would have happened up to relatively recently.
Did that relationship, would that be tight?
Well, not with Omar Hertig, obviously, no, and maybe not with journalists, but the idea of, at least the idea of players from different counties coming together in a base in Dublin and training, that would have still been happening in the last 5 or 6 years. I'm not sure whether it's been happening in the last couple of years, but certainly I would have heard of it in the last few years. But the Omar, Omar Hertig's relationship with the Kerry players that time, it was interesting, actually. I'm going off on another tangent from that, but an interesting thing about that was that the Kerry players, you would have had Jack O'Shea, obviously was based in Dublin. Charlie Nelligan would have been up doing, I think he was in college. He was a baker, so he would have been either college or an apprenticeship. But anyway, he was in Dublin for a spell, and there was different guys like that would come in and out. But you would always have a few lads from Cavan and a few guys from Monaghan or wherever, kind of training with the Kerry boys as well. So it was almost before they ever got onto the field to have to play them, to have to train with them and see the levels that they operated at, was a demoralizing experience for the other players, because they couldn't keep with them in training at all, because what the Kerry players will be expected to be fit for Mick O'Dwyer back down in Killarney was another level again to what, like
different dimension completely.
Different dimension. I mean, Jacko did a column with us for donkey's years, and I remember him saying like that they would go back down even after all the training with Omar Hertig in Dublin and all the hard work they'd be doing. Dwyer would basically pick on him for a week and put him through the worst, most excruciating training just to make sure he wasn't slacking above in Dublin with Omar Hertig.
The level expected.
Wire to wires and just hellish stuff. Stuff that would have Jacko woozy like when he'd be coming back after 5 or 6 wire to wires. But anyway, that's another. So yeah, it's a different landscape. It's a different world. It's wider, more expansive media, different everything. Like
And that kind of brings me on to, I suppose, the current situation and the roadmap itself. So I suppose the main headlines from it, if you want to kind of call it that, are club football is back from the 29th of June. That's when training can resume. It's restricted to a maximum of 10 players, 2 coaches. It then goes to full contact on the 20th of July with a view to a resumption of competitive play on the 31st of July. And then similarly in inter-county, it's going to be the 14th of September with a view to returning to play on the 17th of October.
Yeah.
First and foremost, rolling it out like that, first with clubs, then into inter-county. What's your take on that from the GAA?
I think it's what they've said they're going to do from the very get-go. And the natural and obvious logic is that there's so many, substantially more club players than inter-county players. So to do it in the other way around would be essentially disenfranchising the vast majority of your playing population and putting them up on blocks for an unnecessary amount of time. So I don't think they can do it any other way. I know there was talk, obviously, of maybe putting the inter-county players first because they could do testing and maybe maybe not so much isolate them for training, but it would be more manageable, a small population of players.
The smaller group.
Smaller groups. The GA made the point last week again when they were explaining this roadmap, that their logic and their policy approach is about minimizing risk. And when it comes in terms, they were asked about testing actually, and about the possibility of inter-county players being tested specifically, and they made the point that that is only happening in elite professional sport. GAA is not a professional sport or an amateur sport, and in every single other model that's being used outside of elite sport, and I'm talking Premier League, that high end of things, is essentially saying you don't need testing. You just need to do the things that we've been doing and do the things that they outline in the roadmap in terms of hygiene and questionnaire, check your temperature, social distancing, etc. All the stuff we know. Just keep doing that in a training setting and be nice and cautious and slow in your advancing, and you'll be fine. You don't need testing. So from that side of things, I can understand it. They're a community-based organization. They're there to serve the community.
Yeah, of course.
And I can understand it. So I wouldn't have any issue with it. It makes sense to me to start with the clubs.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, it is very much in line with their stance the whole way through this. They for me, anyways, it seems to reflect their viewpoint that the GAA is most concerned with the health and well-being of the communities which form the GAA. And if they're overly cautious, it's better than taking risks that result in the harm of their players and their communities. And I think you're right in terms of there's a vastly greater proportion of the playing populace playing club than county. So ease it back in that way, as opposed to doing it the other way around. And even if you do provide loads of testing, you're kind of saying, you're putting those players up on a pedestal and saying it's more important to get these players back than the grassroots of the community that make up the GAA.
Well, it's like anything. If you're explaining too much anyway, if you're explaining too much, you're losing. So they would spend a lot of time explaining why are we getting into county and why are we getting testing kits for these guys. And I mean, of all things for the GAA to do, and they wouldn't. I mean, it was suggested a while back, the idea of testing inter-county players, the notion of the GAA taking test kits out of the general populace to test a very small cohort of elite amateur sports people. It goes against the ethos, it goes against the mentality, it goes against everything that the GAA would purport to stand for. So it wouldn't happen. The interesting thing as well, it's worth pointing out as well, is that by starting the club competitions first, it gives them potentially a longer window. I know they're talking about an 11-week season from July till whenever into October, but the reality, the practical reality is that clubs can keep playing while the inter-county championships are on. They can wait until the county championships are over and play on again if they want. John Horan made the point on Friday that he had spoken to a county secretary that day, actually, and they had put provisional plans in place for a county championship where you have round robin, quarterfinals, semi-finals, finals. There's this sort of sense that the club player is going to get screwed with one game in the year. That's not. It's up to, according to the GAA, it is up to county boards to set up their championships as they see fit. And if they want to run county leagues as well, without county players while the county championships on, or if they want to run county leagues, whatever way they want to,
it's very much in their hands to do so. Yeah,
it's in their gift.
Can I just ask you though, in terms of the way they've laid it out, so return to training on the 29th, return to full contact on the 20th of July, and then return to competitive play on the 31st of July. There's a lot of concerns there that 11-day window of full contact training isn't enough to get back match fit and match ready. It's going to result in a slew of injuries to club players. Do you feel there might be pressure on the GAA to revise that date for a resumption of full contact training based on that?
I don't know. I don't know will that particular reason be why the pressure will come on.
Okay.
It's certainly a factor. But I think that there's even already, I mean, the interesting thing was that their roadmap plan, which they came out on Friday evening, the government had already accelerated on Friday afternoon. And the GAA obviously had no knowledge of this acceleration coming. It's not the first time that the government has done something without the GAA knowing, and obviously why would the GAA know about this particular acceleration? But there would have been other situations before that where you would have imagined that the GAA might have got a heads up on.
Yeah, they could have given them a bit of a heads up.
Just give them a little bit of a heads up. But anyway, my point is that I would expect now the GAA to accelerate a few different aspects of their plan, all things going well. And one of the things I would think will be that limitation on 10 players, 2 coaches, and the non-contact aspect of it. There was already talk, even Friday, Saturday, there was talk already of them possibly even bringing the club window forward a week. So I think that brings us to July 24th. So, and in tandem with that, you're training your numbers. Your instead of 10 players, it could well be 15 when they go back, and it could well be that contact training is introduced a little earlier.
Yeah.
So all those issues around match fitness, getting ready, can be addressed to some degree. But it is a fair point. I'm not sure how they can get around it in terms of having guys conditioned properly for games. the one thing you can say, I suppose, is that it's the same for everybody.
They're all
So,
at the
like,
one level. Yeah.
they're all at the one level.
Yeah.
And we know as well, I mean, we know that teams, individuals are doing work. We know that they're getting training programs, that they're getting guidance on training regimes and stuff like that, far more so than they would be
usually,
individual
attention, yeah.
No, I know club can be quite, it can be better in some places and not in others. It's the nature of club, but the potential for their prep to be up to reasonable scratch, I would have thought is pretty good. But you're right, Joe. Like you're right. Like there are going to be injuries. I even think the first weekend of the Bundesliga, there was a fair few muscle injuries and stuff like that, just from guys being out of match practice. So it's going to happen.
It's almost inevitable, and I think because I was going to talk to you about this anyway, in terms of elite athletes in other sports are allowed to return to training today. Why did the GAA push it back to the 29th? Possibly one of the reasons for that is that in the interim period, it gives them an opportunity to kind of assess the lie of the land. Is the phase 2 that was rolled out today, is that going to be accelerated? Are they going to be able to kind of run things quicker than they had previously assumed? Gives them kind of 3 weeks to assess that window, and as you say, maybe bring forward the full contact date.
What they've done very well throughout this process, I feel, is that the GAA have always given themselves enough wriggle room and flexibility to move, just to shuffle one way or the other. They've been criticised in some quarters for being too conservative. I don't think I wouldn't agree with that at all. I think they've kind of gone the most prudent way they possibly can, while leaving themselves the wriggle room, as I say, to accelerate forward a little bit if they want to. I think that that those dates are movable feasts, as I say, and especially in terms of the government acceleration now, that gives them a bit of room.
Yeah, 100%. And when we do then see a return to, we'll say, the All-Ireland series, it's not specified what competitive play will return. So prior to this, I suppose around the time they formed the 15-man management committee, there was talk of them playing out the remaining fixtures in the league, particularly the ones that are going to have an effect on promotion and relegation. Do you think they're going to play out the league, or they're going to launch directly into the All-Ireland series?
I think there's probably 3 options on the table. In fact, there is 3 options on the table, right? Number one is you start with your league games and you move on to your championship. The other option is you flip it, you do your championship first and you fit in your league games at the end if you can. And the third one is to try and run them in parallel. So let's say, for argument's sake, that let's say Galway are playing Connacht Championship on week
Galway
2.
Mayo was their next match.
Let's say they're playing, right? So yeah, well, we will just say that Galway are playing a Connacht Championship game on a particular weekend.
Okay, sorry.
If they're not playing the following week or maybe 2 weeks after, they might slot in a league game there. That's another option. It's not ideal, but it's an option. I think in terms of getting the leagues played, I think the big onus is on the football side of things, because they're obviously going forward with a 2-tier competition next year. So they need to have their Division 1 and 2 and their Division 3 and 4 set to see who's going into Tier 2 and who's going to Tier 1 for next year.
Yeah.
From a hurling's point of view, it's not as, obviously the lower level league, the lower leagues need to be sorted out, but the higher ones, we say we're at quarter-final stage, semi-final stage. I can't imagine that they'll waste much time with a league quarter-final, league semi-final. Those games would be up for debate in a normal season whether they should be played. So I think in a scenario like this, they can be easily cut off. I would also say, in terms of a football league situation, they may not bother with league finals. They might just play out whatever games are left. The interesting question for me is, and it's one I floated in at the weekend, was, at the moment we're in a good place in terms of the virus, relatively speaking, and I say that conscious of the fact that a lot of people have lost loved ones, and it's been an appalling time for an awful lot of people. I don't think there's probably very few people in the country who haven't been touched in some way by it. But at the moment, we're in a situation where this lockdown period can be relaxed and we can move forward. There is talk, obviously, of a second surge potentially in the winter time, coming in tandem with flu season anyway. So the question for the GAA in that context is, are you better to start your championship essentially while the going is good? Do you start it in October, get it as far down the road as you possibly can, in case there is another surge, And it may well be that your championship could either get cut in half, truncated, or stopped entirely if you wait too long to start it, if that makes sense. So there's a question there. My personal gut feeling will be that they may well go with league matches first, because I think counties, managers and players will probably be keen just to get the cobwebs off and play some league games. Games which will have relevance. Will obviously have big relevance for some teams, but for other teams, there'll be a chance just to wipe the rust off before championship.
Yeah, get back to match fitness, as we said, and also kind of blood players in and get them kind of back to that their peak physical condition, so they won't be picking up knocks when the championship kicks in. It also brings me to the next point. When they do reintroduce the championship and launch it again, how do you think they're going to structure it? In terms of, do you think it'll be direct knockout? Do you think they'll do a backdoor? That they're going to have to do some sort of amendment to it, because it can't be the way it was previously, particularly in the football championship. Yeah,
well, they've had a special congress back earlier in this whole saga, which allowed them essentially give their management committee essentially the power to change the football and hurling championships as quickly as they need to, so they don't have to go through a big administrative rigmarole to do it. So that's fine. That gives them the flexibility to go, well, okay, look, we have X number of weeks. What can we realistically do in that period of time? Now, they've given themselves, again, and this is the GAA policy all the way along, they've given themselves that flexibility. We're saying October 17th. John Horan has said that he is happy for championships to roll over as far as February 2021. Whether he's referring to senior championships or underage championships, or what are we talking about, they've kept it quite vague. I think that the general assumption is that it will be back to old school straight knockout. But again, I think it just depends. It depends on what they feel now going forward. Now, they will be the one thing, and maybe it's something the GAA haven't done up to now, but they're going to have to do it now. They're going to have to think about October with a June mindset, if that makes sense. They're going to have to make decisions now that impact much later in the year and hope for the best. So they've essentially said in 3 weeks' time they're going to give us a fixture schedule and a master fixture schedule for the Inter-County Championships. So their Central Competitions Control Committee are the group that the central fixture making body. So they'll start meetings this week, and they'll have 3 weeks to come up with a solution. Personally speaking, I think they'll go with straight knockout. I think that's the safest, most prudent way forward. It also allows you the potential to get the All-Ireland Championship and the Provincial Championships done in an 8 to 9 week sort of window, which means they could have it done and dusted by Christmas, and we can start 2021 at a clean slate.
Yeah. And the final question then, thank you so much for all your time and insights so far. We're just running a little bit short in time, so I just want to ask you, the question on everybody's list, particularly John Horan's, has been quite frequently throughout this process, is the issue of attendance. Will there be fans? If there are, they're talking about a capacity of maybe 20,500 people in Croke Park. How do you think they're going to work fan attendance?
I think it's exactly as they've been saying. They're going to have to apply. At the moment, it's 2 meter social distancing. If it's 1 meter social distancing, they'll have to do the sums. They'll have to find venues that are suitable for that. I would have thought in Leinster, Croke Park would probably take the vast majority of games. In Munster, they'll have more options in terms of Páirc Uí Chaoimh, Thurles. Terraces obviously are out. Over in Connacht, you're probably looking at McHale Park, possibly the Hyde. It depends on the games and the projected attendance and stuff. I do think we'll see people at games. Behind closed doors makes no sense whatsoever on any level. Financial, emotional, social, any which way. It just doesn't make sense for the GAA. It makes sense for professional sport because they pay the bills through their media rights. 49% of revenue for the GAA comes in through the gates. So they're going to have people at it. But I do think, I do think that they're talking about, as you say, 20-odd thousand, possibly upwards of 40,000 if it's 1 meter social distance.
If it's 1 meter, yeah.
I would not rule anything out. Why would we rule anything out in June? We'll have to wait and see what the scenario is come October. As they repeatedly say as well, look, we're talking now about a plan for October. This whole thing could be wrecking ball in 2 weeks' time, depending on how the next 2 weeks go. So, why rule anything out or rule anything in right now? it's suited the GAA to just be as flexible as they possibly can with these things for as long as they can.
Yeah, and thankfully now at least we have a roadmap, and we can start hoping and dreaming again about a return to championship and about a return to play. And it gives you and I the opportunity to have conversations like this, for which I thank you very, very much for your time.
Yeah, no problem, Joe. Look, we're all looking forward to getting back. You know,
Yeah.
I don't think for all sorts of different reasons, you know, you'd miss the traffic jams, and you'd miss the,
Well, of course,
you'd miss it all. You know, but look, these things too will pass, and we'll be back out there again.
We will indeed. Michael, thank you so much for joining us on the show this week, and love to everyone down in Macroon, and please God, we'll see you. We'll see you in the Sunday Times. Hopefully, we'll read you in the Sunday Times next Sunday, and we'll see you at a match at a venue in the not too distant future.
We'll hope so. Thanks very much, Joe. Cheers.
Please God, talk to you soon. And that's it from this week's show, folks. Once again, massive thanks to my guest this week, Michael Foley. Thank you, as always, to yourselves for watching. Please join us next week for another edition of Irish Media Network Sports Update with me, your host, Joe Caulfield. Take it easy, be safe, and good luck.
Irish Media Network. We entertain.